We are live on Facebook
Okay.
as well. So, hi, Shakira. Did I say it right?
Shakira.
Shakira.
Yes,
Okay,
Shakira.
Shakira. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, hi, Shakira. Thank you for agreeing to this conversation because I'm excited. And I remember the first time I saw your video was on TikTok. That's before like I ever made like Sickle Cell Warriors Collective. And I just remember saying, "Oh wow, like I want to do that one day. I want to like share my stories too, just like Shakira sharing her stories about her journey and then her kids as well." And here we are today, 2022.
Oh, that's so sweet. So thank you for having me. I love your page. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. I equally love yours too. So
Okay.
my name is Osase Odiase, and for those who do not know, I had the bone marrow transplant in 2021 of September. So I'm currently 9 months post transplant. So I started Sickle Cell Warriors collectives as a way to collect different narratives of sickle cell warriors, parents who have kids with sickle cell disease, caregivers, just so that people don't feel alone. I want to unify warrior voices through pretty much storytelling. Because for me growing up, that's one thing I did feel is alone because I didn't really know anybody at all who had sickle cell disease. So the plan for me was to know as many like warriors, caregivers, parents as possible. And here we are today. So we would love to know, who is Shakeira Wesley. Gosh.
Well, I am a warrior mom of two. I have two beautiful, amazing warriors, one boy, one girl. They are 7 and 8. And I am a wife. I am a college graduate of Clark Atlanta University. I'm always going to shout out CAU when I can. Um, I am a former educator, so I was a teacher many years ago before I started with You for Life, and I am a huge sickle cell advocate and an advocate for healthy eating and how healthy eating can positively impact people who have sickle cell disease. So I think that's who I am in a nutshell.
In a nutshell, in a nutshell. Okay, so I want to show everybody your. Is it okay if I share your beautiful family,
Sure.
like your website?
Mhm.
Um, Only because you guys, her family, they're beautiful, beautiful, beautiful individuals. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see it. I need to update my picture, but yes, that's us. That was
So good. But guys, this is Shakira's family. And can you just tell us who is who? And you said there's 7 and 8. So who's 7 and who's 8?
okay, so that's my husband Tyreek. He is actually a minister. At he works with the college students here at one of the bigger churches in Atlanta, Buckhead Church. And that's my son Tyson. He is 8, and his birthday is in December. And that is my baby girl Jordan. She's 7, and she just had a
Oh,
birthday in May. So
happy belated birthday to Jordan.
yes. So they're a little bit older now, but I need only pictures we've taken are Christmas pictures, and so I don't want Christmas pictures
Now,
on the
you
website.
guys, just go to We Eat for Life and go to Shakira's page.
Yes.
You'll see every updated content, everything that she's doing in the sickle cell space for her family, for her children. So definitely head over there and visit Shakira's page. Okay, so question number one. So prior to you having children with sickle cell disease, did you like have you ever heard of sickle cell disease? Did you know a family member who had the disease? Was it like brand new to you? Like where was your knowledge at the time of sickle cell disease?
So I have sickle cell trait, of
Hmm.
course, because well, I either need to have that or the disease to have children with it. But I have trait, and so I knew I had trait when I was a kid because they tested me when I was born. And so my mom
Ooh,
told me growing up that I had trait, and so that was really all I knew. No one in my family had the actual disease, so I didn't know anything about the actual disease. I just knew I had trait and I carried it, and I knew the odds. So I knew that if I got with someone who had also had sickle cell trait, the
mm-hmm.
odds would be 75% chance they wouldn't have the actual disease,
Right.
and then a 25% chance they would have the actual disease. So I knew about that. And then in college, I met a really good friend of mine. She had the actual disease, but she talked about it, but not, she was more of an advocate for it and not necessarily
Okay.
talked about all of her like struggles with it.
Mhm.
And so I think that was one thing that I know a lot of people with sickle cell, they're very private because people just don't understand what they go through. And I feel like
Yeah.
she was one of those people. I
Mhm.
wish I would have known more, but I honestly didn't know anything about like what the complications were, what any of her triggers were. Like I didn't know any of that. So I knew some of like as far as the odds of having
Mhm.
children with sickle cell, but that was really basically where my knowledge stopped. And because I didn't really know anyone and know their real experience who had the disease,
Mhm.
I honestly didn't know it was severe as it was. If I'm going to be completely honest,
Yeah.
I went into it kind of naive because I just didn't. No one told me all the list of complications and things that come with having sickle cell. Like I had no
Yeah.
idea it was a chronic disease. I had no idea, it was so life threatening. Like
Mhm.
there were so many things I just didn't know that no one told me until after I had my son. So
Yeah, I think, yeah, you're right. It's very, a lot of sickle cell patients, we are private. But we're trying to change that narrative now because, like you said, people need to know the severity behind it. I think a lot of time we hear sickle cell disease, but we don't know the list of complications that might come with it, right? In terms of like organ failure or like jaundice of the eyes. So little things like that. But you're right. We do need to start talking more about it so that people are aware and sort of like they weigh the risk. They know, like you said, you knew, but you didn't know like the severity of it until you
right.
had kids. So how did you find out that your children had sickle cell disease? Um, yeah, what was that like for you, and what was that like for your husband? Like, what was that whole process?
So in Georgia, well, in the US in
Mm-hmm.
2006, they made it mandatory for all newborns and all infants to get tested for sickle cell disease. So
Okay.
because my children were born after 2006, they both got tested in the hospital
Mm,
before we even went home after being delivered.
okay.
And you get a call about a week after to let you know that they have the actual disease. And my doctor called me. The first time it was someone from the hospital, but with my daughter, because I already had a pediatrician and all that stuff lined up, it was our regular pediatrician called and gave me the news.
Mm,
And so that's how we found out with both of them. I was kind of with Tyson. I
mm-hmm.
felt like I was in shock and I was kind of in denial
Mm,
because he didn't have any problems or complications.
mm,
Like even he didn't have any signs or symptoms until he was 2 years old. And so
that's great.
for
Mm,
right, so for me, they were saying like, oh well, he this could be happening, and you got to watch out for all these things like swollen hands and stuff like that, and babies as young as like 6 months and stuff. But he didn't have any of those complications. And he also had a really high hemoglobin, and
mm,
they thought that he might have this mutation that continuously made fetal hemoglobin, and they thought that's why his was so high. But he got
okay.
tested, and he did not have that. He just, by the grace of God, had really high hemoglobin.
That's really good.
And so he didn't have any complications until he was 2,
Okay.
and I had already had Jordan by then. So I had them pretty close together. So
Right. One is 7, one is 8. Okay.
yeah. So he was 16 and a half months when I had Jordan. So they're pretty close in age. So he didn't have any complications till after I had already had Jordan.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I was really kind of in denial because I'm like, they
Mm,
keep saying all these things are gonna happen, but nothing's happening to him. I'm like,
yeah.
he's fine.
Yeah.
So I did ask the doctors, like, is there something I could be doing at home that would maybe help him? But
Mhm,
they were just like, regular checkups, make sure you gotta bring him in, every 3 months for their sickle cell checkup.
yeah.
And I don't know if everybody does that, but here they have to go in every 3 months for their blood work and stuff like that. So um we just kept doing that. But when he had his first pain crises, I think that's when it really hit me, and it
Mm,
it rocked me.
what
It
happened?
did. He had pain in his arm, and he wasn't moving it. And so like he was like really whiny this day. And I was just like, what is going on with him? I'm like, he's never like acted like this before.
Right.
And it kind of just clicked like, oh my God, I think he's having a pain crisis. And it was in his
Mhm.
arm. And he was like just really uncomfortable and he wouldn't move it. And so I called the doctor because we have like the 24-hour line we can call or whatever. And so I called them and they were just like, give him some Motrin. And if that doesn't help, then you can bring him in. But we gave him some Motrin and he was fine. So it was a mild crisis, but it was absolutely a crisis. Because he
Yeah.
didn't fall or anything. So I know it was a pain crisis. With Jordan,
Mhm.
she would get the swollen hands every once in a while when she was it started maybe when she was about 8 months.
Yeah.
But she didn't cry or anything, but I would just notice like, man, her hands look bigger than usual.
Mhm.
So she had some sort of symptoms, but she didn't have pain crises for years later. Like pain wasn't really something that she dealt with for a very long time, which I was grateful for.
Till when? What age does she start having a pain crisis?
I'd say Jordan was probably maybe 3, maybe 4 before she had like pain crises.
Mhm.
And she didn't get hospitalized for her first pain crisis until earlier this year, was her first time being hospitalized for a pain crisis.
Really?
So, yeah.
So she always just had like the mild ones whereby you can treat at home with pain
Hmm.
medications and you don't have to go in.
Yeah.
But that must be very, very complicated for you because it's like, okay, on one hand, like you said, the doctor's like, this is how your kids, this is what they're supposed to experience. And then they don't experience that.
Yeah.
And plus, Tyson and Jordan, their pain crises are different. Like, do you ever say, okay, this worked for Tyson, so I'm going to try that method um and see if it's gonna work for Jordan? Like, how did you say, okay, this is not gonna work, this is gonna work? Like, what was that like? That whole dynamic? Because again, you had them close to each other, so it's like
Right.
you're dealing with different types of crisis, different types of symptoms, presentations. So, what was that like?
So I started noticing the difference when Tyson had a pain crisis in 2017 that was in his jaws.
Mm, I saw
And
that recently. Yep.
so, but I didn't know what was happening. So I called the doctors. I'm like, something's wrong with his mouth. Like he couldn't talk. His tongue was like doing this weird movement. And so they thought he had a stroke. So we had to
Okay.
like rush him in and do all this stuff. And eventually they found out after running like MRIs, MRAs, and like all this stuff, they realized that it was just a crisis, but it was in his mouth. And so that's why he wasn't able to talk. So it was like his jaws
Mhm.
and like in his mouth.
Yeah.
Um, and that hospital visit is when I was like, okay, we've got to figure out what's the difference between the two of them because she still at the time had not had a pain crisis. And so I'm just
Right.
like, I don't understand why he's having so many complications. And so I
Mhm.
asked the doctors again about diet. And at the time we were already eating healthy. I had already started with Eat for Life the year prior.
Okay.
And when I say healthy, I mean generally healthy, like no fried foods, no refined sugars, processed
Awesome.
foods. So like
Mm.
we weren't eating anything like that, but we were
Yeah.
eating meat and dairy.
Okay.
Except Jordan wasn't eating dairy because
Okay.
she had been allergic to dairy ever since I was nursing her. So every time
Hmm.
I would eat anything with cheese,
Yeah.
pizza, milkshake, whatever,
Uh-huh.
she would have the worst like bowel cramps and stuff from like
Mhm.
infancy. And
Right.
so when I asked them, I said, well, what is actually happening with the pain crises? And they were
Right.
talking about inflammation in the body and how that can
Mhm.
cause it. So
Yeah.
I just went home and started doing a ton of Googles about what can cause inflammation in the body. I wasn't necessarily looking specifically for foods. I was just trying to figure out, was there something in the home that we may have been doing, like lighting the wrong
Mhm.
candles and
Mhm.
whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and dairy and meat were one of the biggest things that came up as far as inflammation. And I was like,
Mm.
and I had to start thinking, like, what is he eating when he's having these like severe pain crises? And it was dairy. And
Huh.
Jordan, because she had never had it, she wasn't really having pain crises like that.
Mm,
So I decided then and there, we're gonna go vegan. It took a year for us to
okay.
go vegan. We went slowly because I
Okay.
wasn't ready.
I mean, dairy is a good, like, it tastes good. It tastes
Yes, I wasn't ready. I was like, I'm not going cold turkey. I cannot do it. So it took a year to like get it out
uh-huh.
of our system or whatever. But
Mhm,
and I started noticing the difference in Tyson. Like, even if he did have a pain crisis, it wasn't
mhm,
as severe as the ones he had prior to, where some
mhm.
may last, 5, 6 days.
Right.
These one will be like, oh, mommy, I'm kind of achy, I'm hurting. I give
Mhm.
him some Motrin, and he's still running around playing, as opposed
Right.
to like a crisis that's like I literally can't move.
Right.
Um, so I think that was the biggest like aha moment. Like, okay, something is happening. They're doing something different.
Right.
And why is Jordan having such an easier time with this
Mhm.
than Tyson? And so that's when we changed all of our diet. So my husband and I were also vegan because we didn't want to make the kids be vegan, and then we're like eating chicken and
And
macaroni and cheese in front of them. So we were like, we have to do it as a family.
yeah, I saw this one video where the mom's eating ice cream, but then it looks like she's like reading a book or something, and the kid comes up front, and he's like, "Oh, what's mommy reading?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm reading a book," but she's eating like behind the book. So yeah, 100%.
No,
What did that look like? Because for kids, it's, I don't know. You have to get creative with food. Like you have to get creative, because kids are very picky just naturally. So what did vegan for children look like? What were they eating exactly?
so I would just say the portions changes. So for we always had a lot of vegetables because I'm never, like I said, they never had like my kids have never had a chicken nugget. Like
Ah,
even prior to being vegan, like they weren't eating like chicken nuggets, and because it's processed. So I
it
was
is
like, I'll
processed.
give you some
Yeah.
grilled nuggets. Like I can cut up some chicken breasts and make you some. But
Mm,
like going to like a McDonald's or Wendy's for chicken nuggets,
yeah.
that was something that they never had anyway.
Yeah.
So they didn't really have like oh, I miss eating such
Mm,
and such because
yeah.
they never had it before.
Right.
And then our portion sizes just changed. So like
Okay.
now, as opposed to having, black eyed peas, greens, mashed potatoes, and some meat, we got
Mm-hmm.
more black eyed peas, more greens, more mashed potatoes, and we take the meat out.
Mm,
So the portion sizes just change
just
for
yeah.
us. And I think that was how I started it because I didn't really know how to cook vegan meals. At first, I was just like, I'm just gonna take the
Take
meat
out
out and switch the portion sizes
yeah,
around.
yeah.
And then I would substitute for like tacos or something or nachos. I would just not add
Mhm,
the meat, but I can still put the black beans. I can still put the tomatoes, the lettuce,
mhm.
every
And like
guacamole. You can
the
stuff everything you want on it and
like the
just take the meat out. Yeah.
yeah,
So for
okay.
me, that was how I started doing it. And then I started experimenting, like actually making the foods that we loved but missed, like macaroni and cheese and stuff like that. So now I can say I know I have mastered vegan macaroni and cheese.
Yeah. And it tastes
But
good. Does it taste good?
it tastes it really does. It tastes good. Like I'm proud of
Ooh,
myself. I will toot my own horn with that one.
okay.
I will toot my own horn with that one. It
Okay.
tastes good. It took a little bit of trial and error because
You're
all
right.
vegan cheese is not made the same. Some of it doesn't melt, and it
Ooh.
is so gross.
Ooh. I can't even
So you have to be determined and really want to do it
get
because
it.
it's a lot of trial and error. But
Wow. Were they
yeah.
like, can you share your favorite, like maybe YouTube where you find your recipes, or like where do you find your recipes from?
I actually make my own. So I love to cook, and
Hmm.
I will like taste something or watch somebody make something and be like, I can do that. But then I'll put my own spin on it. I will say I always recommend Sweet Potato Soul. She has a YouTube channel and a cookbook.
Okay.
She might have two cookbooks out by now. But I love her, and she makes vegan food.
Mm.
And she has like recipes for vegan soul food as well. So
Oh, vegan soul
yeah,
food. I might go
yeah,
with you
yeah.
because
Yeah, so I like sweet potato, so I always say her. But for the most part, it's just me
Mhm.
trying out random stuff. Like, you know what? I bet this goes with this and this goes with this because I love to cook.
Mhm.
So being in
Yeah,
the kitchen for me is like therapy. I'm like, how can I make something work that I know my kids are gonna love? Like we
yeah.
used to go. I don't know if they have the Jason's Deli in Canada, but it's this place
No.
down here where you can get these like massive baked potatoes
Mhm.
and you can get whatever you want on top. And we used to always get the chicken chili. And that was one of the things I missed the most
Yeah.
about being vegan. And so I was like, I'm gonna make me a bomb vegan, like Southwestern style type chili. And
Mhm.
so I put roasted corn in there, and I've got the black beans, and I put salsa in there, and it tastes really, really good. I just pour it on top of my
Yeah.
baked potato. And so now that's one of the kids' favorite thing to eat. And you can add some vegan sour cream and vegan shredded cheese on top.
Yeah.
So good.
Delicious. Ooh, okay. You make my mouth water. My mouth water, man. Okay. Okay. So next question. So you said that you realized a healthy diet was like it was working. Not that you guys didn't have an unhealthy diet, but in terms of like the dairy and then you went vegan. So when did you say, okay, now I want to share this with the rest of the world? Like tell us about your organization, We Eat for Life. What made you say, okay, it's time for me to take what I've noticed in my kids and then now share with the world, because I know with things like that, like for me growing up, my mom, I had a bunch of like different like cod liver oil. Obviously everybody takes folic acid. I drank a lot of greens even without knowing their benefits. I just remember as
Mm-hmm.
a kid, I'm like, oh no, it's time to drink that green juice again today. Oh no,
Mm-hmm.
I have to take that cod liver oil pill again. I just remember like so many different things. And as a kid, I'm like, oh, why do I have to take all these things? But when I was doing my research as like nutrition and sickle cell disease, I'm like, okay, it makes sense. But my mother, of course, doing the research on her end was just giving me all these stuff that she kept on like finding out on the internet. So, but she also like she didn't share with the world. It was just
Yeah.
me. And so people like ask her like, "Oh, how come your daughter looks so healthy? Like, but she has
Mm-hmm.
sickle cell disease. Like, why does she look like that?" So when did you decide, okay, you know what? I want to let everybody know the secret. That's not really a secret, but it's a secret if you don't know about it. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. No, definitely. So I actually started the year before Tyson had that crisis in his mouth. So
Mhm.
2 years prior to being vegan, I started with Eat for Life, and it was because my friends and my family kept
Mhm.
telling me I needed to start it. People need to know what you're doing. You're doing such a great job, and I was just like,
Yeah.
I don't really know if people really want to hear what I have to say. I'm
Mm.
not a doctor. I'm not a nutritionist. So I
Right.
just felt like I didn't have, the authority to really tell people what they could be doing.
Mhm.
But their nurse practitioner, who I absolutely love, and she had been seeing them since they were infants, and she was like, I know that we've talked about their diet and all that. She was like, but I really think you need to share what you're doing because
Mhm.
your kids are some of the healthiest sickle cell kids I've ever seen.
Mm.
And that to me was like, okay, that was like my stamp of approval. Like, if a nurse practitioner is telling
That's
you, like, because everybody was already telling me anyway, and I felt like I
right.
wanted to do it, but I was
Right.
just scared, if I'm honest. I was just scared about how people would perceive my message.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm gonna do it. So their nurse practitioner is the one who really like encouraged me to do it. And so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do it. And I'm gonna talk about only my experience. I'm not gonna say
Mhm.
that this will, change
Help.
everyone else's experience. But
Right.
I know it has helped my kids. And
Yeah.
so I wanted people to know, like, you can try this and see if it helps
Mhm.
yours too. Because
Yeah.
it wasn't something that the doctors were telling me I could do and it could be beneficial. I had to find out on my own.
By
And
yourself.
so I felt like if I can help another mom or another
Mhm.
dad in the same situation as me and my husband, then I wanted to help them.
Yeah, 100%. I
Yeah.
think organizations like yours, We Eat for Life, it's so important because I know on the medical standpoint, if your specialty is not like, naturopathic doctor, like they will not be telling you these things because then to them they're giving you quote unquote false hope that has nothing to do with medicine. So organizations like We Eat for Life, like you said, you're sharing your experience, what worked for you based on the research that you have done, right?
Right.
So in terms of, because we know what folic acid is important, B vitamins are important, chlorophyll is important. So tell us about the Wesley diet. I saw that very big, very green. So what is the Wesley diet, and was that what you started with like right away? And you're like, oh, let me call this the Wesley diet, or like you were doing it and you're like, okay, these are the foods I'm noticing that I'm eating the most, and these are the food I notice I don't eat the most. So this is what works, and this will what be the Wesley diet. How did that come about? What is it? And yeah.
Yeah, so all of those things you named are absolutely things in our diet. But also I just decided to look up foods that were the same way I was finding foods that cause inflammation. I wanted to find
Mm-hmm.
anti-inflammatory foods. And so one thing, I guess I could say three things that we keep in our diet, two are on a daily, but it's cinnamon and ginger. Every single day my kids have something with cinnamon and ginger, whether it's a smoothie I make, like a milkshake made with, of course, a vegan milk, or oatmeal or something, or a fruit smoothie with some ginger in it. Like they always have cinnamon and ginger because they are really good anti-inflammatories. Another thing is turmeric is a really
Oh,
good
you
anti-inflammatory.
sound like my
And
mother.
so
Like,
look, she knows what she talking about. You better listen to your mama.
yes.
And so I make these turmeric milkshakes that my kids absolutely love, with vegan milk and bananas and turmeric and just a little bit of agave nectar or whatever sweetener you prefer. And they suck them down like crazy. And I always give them to them if they're in a pain crisis, because I feel I have noticed a difference on like how long the pain crises last and everything. Like they're just not as, it's, I can see the difference in how they act and how their mobility is. They still have it even though they're in pain. And so
Right.
that's one of the things that I swear by.
So turmeric and
And
agave nectar and cinnamon and ginger.
yeah,
Okay.
so the agave nectar isn't really to help with anything, but just add a little bit of sweetness, because turmeric can sometimes, be like a little
Yeah.
bit bitter.
Yeah.
And so you might not want to drink a whole drink with it unless it's like a tea or something. But my kids like milkshakes, so I gotta do what they like. So they're not about to sit and drink a cup of tea. Like they're just not
Yeah.
doing
No.
it. They're not doing it. I tried. I'll give them a cold iced tea. So I'll like boil some turmeric with some ginger and
Okay.
do it that way with some bay leaves if they're like
Mm,
congested, like runny
right.
nose or any sort of mucus buildup.
Right.
I'll boil it that way, but then I have to. It's best to drink it a warm or like room temperature. They don't like warm drinks. I don't know what's wrong with my kids, but they don't like they don't like hot drinks. They just don't like it.
Yeah, you don't like it.
They don't
Uh-huh.
like hot drinks, so I have to like let it sit out and they'll drink it room temperature. But it just helps with like congestion and stuff. So
Right.
for me, I was like, let me find things that are anti-inflammatory and
Right.
that help build the immune system. Those were the two things that I focused on and made sure that was in our diet, because aside from pain crises, people with sickle cell disease are immunocompromised. And
Yeah.
so I want my kids to have a fighting chance if they get whatever sort of virus or bacterial infection or whatever.
Right.
And so vitamin C is something that's really big in our house. Not just a supplement, but like eating lots of mangoes. People always think like vitamin C, they think oranges.
Yeah.
Oranges don't really have, they're not like the best fruit to eat. Like they have vitamin C, but mangoes have way more vitamin C than oranges. But
Really?
you wouldn't know that because they're not marketed that way.
No, they're not.
Or like potassium is really good for you. So you automatically think, let me eat a banana.
Avocados, you're gonna say, aren't you? Has
No,
more potassium.
kiwi.
Kiwi has more potassium.
Kiwi has like 3 or 4 times more potassium than a banana. So,
Wow.
like,
Okay.
so I just started looking up like what are the things that I know my kids need in their diet, and how can we get those through the foods we eat. And so that's how I came up with our diet, because I didn't want it to be, I don't want it to be boring. I don't want them to get like tired of being vegan.
Right.
So I just try to switch it up and make sure that they're getting a wide variety of things. I think for
Right.
me, being vegan people think about the limitations it puts on you, but honestly, I feel
Right.
like it opened up a whole new world of like, what
Mhm.
are all these new things we can eat now that we've
Right.
never tried before because we're so used to having that meat on the plate. So let's stick
Right.
something else there
Mhm.
or put something else in that area. So that's how we came up with the Wesley diet.
Wow. So apart from the milkshakes, how else did you incorporate um different ingredients from the Wesley diet? Like you said, kiwi, mangoes. Those are easy because those are naturally sweet. So kids will gravitate towards that. But what about the vegetables? Did you ever like make a smoothie with like veggies in there
I
or
put spinach in my veggies.
uh-huh.
But spinach is probably I put beetroot crystals in my smoothies. So I
Okay.
swear by beetroot crystals. They are really a natural source of good iron. I know that when you have sickle cell, there is a risk of having iron overload, but
Yes.
that comes from blood transfusions, not from you eating foods that are high in iron.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
to make sure that they don't have an iron deficiency or
Mm-hmm.
problems with their iron, I swear by beetroot crystals. So I'll put that in juice or in whatever. But I also like spinach. Spirulina is kind of nasty. It stinks.
I've
It's
heard
basically seaweed. It stinks, but if you make a fruit smoothie, it tastes
okay.
delicious. Like you can't. It'll just make it dark green.
So just a
Um,
little bit of it you just put in the smoothie?
yeah, just put like a teaspoon or
Okay.
really I put more like a tablespoon in there.
A
But
tablespoon. Okay.
yeah, about a tablespoon into like a smoothie about like a good
That
size
big.
smoothie.
Okay.
Yeah, like a good size smoothie.
Okay.
And so that's in there, but we eat tons of vegetables. So like my daughter's favorite thing to eat is greens and broccoli. But
Wow.
yeah, so that's like her ultimate favorite. Like she will pick that over anything any day of the week. And I'm like, I'm not making greens every day, girl. Like we're like I'm not making collard greens every day. um, but and I also think when you think collard greens, you think soul food. A lot of it is like, oh, this is it's heavy and it's not necessarily
Mhm.
healthy. But you don't have to cook it that way. As long as you can season your food properly, it's gonna taste good. Like everything
Mhm.
needs seasoning. So as long as you
Yeah.
season it
Yeah.
well,
It's
I
gonna
feel
taste
like it's gonna taste good. So zucchini is a really good
good.
vegetable that a lot of people I think kind of pass over or whatever, but
Mhm.
it is an alkaline vegetable, so it's definitely more alkaline than acidic. And so I just try to keep lots and lots of vegetables in their diet.
Right.
And it also helps with just gut health and all of that. When you're
Yeah.
eating properly,
Yeah.
you're helping everything in the body, not just the inflammation or not just, the things that have caused sickle cell complications.
Right.
But when you're eating just an
Mhm.
array of everything, it helps with everything. So
Yeah. It
yeah.
does 100%. And so, for example, you say your daughter likes broccoli. Do you put like is there something special? You just season the broccoli regularly and she likes it?
I just saute it. I don't boil it. I will say that. I don't like boil or I don't boil it. I just saute it in like the littlest amount of oil, like in the pan, like not even,
Mhm.
it's like just a little bit. And if it's frozen, I don't even need any oil because I use a nonstick skillet.
And just
Um, and
okay.
y'all just put some seasoning salt and some pepper, a little bit of onion powder, garlic powder, and that's it.
That's it. You do your
Yep,
thing.
that's it. And just cook it until it's just fork tender. I don't like it mushy and like
Mhm.
I like my vegetables to still have a little bit of crunch and a little bit of nutrients left in them. So
Yeah, I
we're not
agree.
trying to cook it. We're not trying to cook it until all the health benefits are gone. Right.
Yeah,
So
100%. Yeah, go
but I
ahead.
think one of the things that I think every parent should do, whether their child has sickle cell or not, is
Mhm.
when you start giving them foods to eat, start with vegetables. My mom always told me to start my kids with vegetables. If you start them with vegetables and
Mhm.
wait to introduce the fruits and stuff till later, then they'll already have an appetite for it. And so they'll like vegetables. And that's what I did. So I didn't start when they
Mhm.
started eating actual table food, like baby
Yeah.
food
Yeah.
around like 6 months. I started with vegetables. They didn't get fruit until later on down the line because, and
Mhm.
even so, that would be okay. You finished all your vegetables. Now you can get
There's a
some
reward,
fruit.
sort of thing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It
And
makes
so
sense.
they don't really have a ton of, like, they don't eat a lot of sweets.
Mhm.
Um, Especially because most candy is crazy, and it's made with refined sugar and like most sweets and stuff. Even
Mm-hmm.
if it's vegan, Oreos are vegan. So it's like you can't say, "Oh, well, it's vegan, it's good for
Yes.
you." No, that's not true. There are
Yeah.
a ton of vegan foods that are not good for you. And so I think if you stick to real foods, that's why I like to say plant-based. If you stick to
Mm-hmm.
real actual foods that grow,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
then I think you're on the right path. Like, and it doesn't have to be all of your diet, but if the majority of your diet can make up of that, because we have,
Yes.
there, I let the kids have vegan ice cream every once in a while or a vegan popsicle every once in a
Mm-hmm.
while. I'm not like that crazy mom that's like, you can't have anything. Like, I'm not like that. But I think some things are okay in moderation, but you still
Mm-hmm.
want to get the best of those things. So
Right.
like we can have popsicles, but the popsicles we have are organic popsicles that are made from
Mm,
real fruit.
right.
So you know what I mean? Like you can
Sugar.
find healthy
Yeah.
options.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. And when you said the beetroot crystal, is that like a powder or like what is it? It's a powder, right?
It's like a powder, but when you like it looks like it honestly looks like little crystals, like little
Hmm.
tiny little crystals, but it's similar to a powder. You can get beetroot powder as well.
Okay.
Um, I would recommend the organic kind just because there's so many germs and pesticides and all that stuff in plants and stuff nowadays.
Yeah.
So I would definitely recommend getting an organic kind.
Yeah.
And I just mix it with apple juice, and sometimes I just drink it that way, or I'll mix it
Mm,
with an actual smoothie. And so I'll put it in a smoothie.
it makes it that way.
Um,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So remember when I posted on TikTok about the pica disorder, whereby you're
Hmm.
eating non-food items, and how I was shocked that it was related to sickle cell disease. And then you said that you give your kids like the beetroot crystals. Did you notice like your kids were eating non-food items for you to be like, okay, let me try this, and like you noticed that worked, but how did you make that relation to beetroot crystals and helping with pica disorder?
So this is actually gonna be the first time I've ever shared this. But my daughter,
Uh-huh.
she ate some of her hair and it freaked me out.
Mm,
And it wasn't a lot, like, but it scared me because I'm like,
right.
what the heck? And she told me she ate it, but I'm just like, what would even make you want to eat something that's not food like that? And so I talked to the
Right.
doctor and they were like, it could be pica. Make sure you just keep an eye out for it.
Mm,
And then they told me this very really scary story about this sickle cell patient that they knew that had ate like all this hair, and she ended up having to have surgery. And so like it freaked me out like crazy. And so I was like, okay, let me look up pica and see
mm-hmm.
what it is and how it could be related to sickle cell. And so basically what I found was that pica a lot of times is caused by iron deficiency.
Right.
And so I was like, how is that happening with sickle cell patients when they so often get iron overload?
Yeah.
But it's not the same type. And so it's like they're getting iron overload from a blood transfusion,
Mm-hmm.
but you can be iron deficient from like not getting the right amount of iron from the food you eat, right?
Right.
From the nutrients you eat.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, I need to find something that's high in nutrients and gonna stop this from happening ever again. And
Mm-hmm.
so my uncle is like a really, really into like eating healthy and stuff. And so I had told him I was looking for something that was really high in iron for the kids, but that the kids could still take. And because at the time, I think she was maybe like 3 or something. So I needed something that kids could still like take. I didn't want it to be
I
like
got
some sort of
you.
supplement that's like,
Yeah.
you can't give to kids. And so
Right.
he went to this health food store that we have here and he found the beetroot crystals for me. And he was like, try this. He was like, I think this will really help. And
Right.
I started giving that to her. At the time, I was giving it to her like a few times a week, but now they only get it about weekly.
Okay.
But it has stopped. I haven't not seen her have any problems since.
Wow.
And I give it to my son too, just to make sure,
Yeah.
that they don't have he doesn't have any complications. But
Yeah.
um, I I just had no idea. Like I just feel like there's so many things they don't tell you.
No, they
And
don't.
so it wasn't until I told the doctor, like, hey, she ate some of her hair. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what's happening? And they're like, oh, that's pica. That's normal for kids with sickle cell. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, it's normal. And they're like,
Yeah.
oh, they'll eat like rocks and dirt. And like,
Mhm.
I'm like, what?
It's like you didn't seem to like want to share this information with me before,
Right.
so I
Right.
can prepare myself. No, no, that's honestly, that's, I've been talking about that a lot with my friends here who have sickle cell disease, and we're like, why do the doctors withhold certain information from us until like we ask you, right? And I think sometimes it's like working in the healthcare field, it's that fear of, again, we don't want to give you information that's going to scare you or
Mhm.
that's going to give you false hope. However, doctors should still be telling you, and so you get that sense of autonomy, like you decide whatever you want, however you want to take the information, but it's not like they didn't tell you about it, right?
Right.
Even with like, the transplant, I don't know if your doctors, like if the pediatrician, if that's a regular thing they were just talking about in the States, but here in Canada it was until they noticed that I had like frequent crisis, they're like, oh, by the way, we your daughter should consider a bone marrow transplant. And it's like, well, why didn't you just say about like tell us about that option alongside like hydroxyurea before? Even with hydroxyurea, same concept. It was until they noticed I was having frequent crises, or like, oh right, this drug exists by the way, and people are using it for sickle cell disease. And it's like, well, thank you for
Right.
my life. I'm just, having crisis and feeling a hot mess. But yeah, it's, I think healthcare workers should feed us that information and let us decide what we want to do with it, so that we're not shocked in, different things that are going on. Because I think also sometimes, like you said, they don't, some certain symptoms do not appear in some kids, so they don't
Mhm.
want to make say that statement in like a general way, like, oh, because your child has sickle cell disease, they will be experiencing this. um
Right.
but I really think they should give us that autonomy, like let's decide what we
Yeah.
want to do with the
Right.
information.
Let me know up front what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Mhm.
feel like I have felt that way for so many years, but we actually got a new hematologist last January of 2021. So last year,
Mhm.
she is the most amazing doctor we have ever had. I just love her so much.
Yeah.
She has a daughter who had sickle cell, but she went through the IVF process and had another child to have her child cured from
Mhm.
sickle
Sickle
cell.
cell.
And so she understands what it's like to be a parent of someone with sickle cell. And so
Right.
she went through, that's actually who started us on this whole journey that we're doing now with IVF, because um she was like, she had a sit down conversation with me because
Mhm.
my husband wasn't at that doctor's visit, and then he had to come back and have another talk with just all of us. But
Mhm.
she was like, your son, even though he doesn't have pain crises very often, his lab work, she was like, I've gone back a few years. She was like, and his lab work is showing that he is sickling, his blood is sickling way more than it should be. And so
Mm.
what's happening is it's damaging his organs.
Mm.
Nobody even told us any of this was even
Wow.
happening.
Yeah.
But he had gotten sick 2 years prior in 2019. They both got the flu. And when he got the flu, his organs started to shut down on him. And
Wow.
so, and even then, they still didn't say, oh, it's probably because his hemoglobin is sickling more than it should.
Even more.
They didn't say that. So it wasn't until we had a doctor who was really like, I'm going to look at
That's
every detail of what's happened to your children. I'm going to like dissect everything and we're going to figure out a plan. So even though his hemoglobin was fairly high before he had gotten the flu and stuff, once he got the flu, it was never able to get back to where it was. He was a consistent high nine, sometimes tens,
wow.
consistently. Like it never dropped. Once he got the flu, he couldn't get over like an 8.2, 8.3. And
Wow.
so I'm like, what is going on? But they never said anything. And so it wasn't until she was like, this is why it's happening.
Mm,
And so we got a whole plan. He is on hydroxyurea now.
that's good.
And it has helped. Um, and so it's frustrating that it takes a doctor who has lived your experience
Yeah.
to want to help you and, get you in a better space.
Mhm.
Um, I will say they told me about hydroxyurea when my kids were really little, and I declined
Mhm.
because I asked like a lot of questions,
Okay.
and
What?
um and they're so I'm like, okay, so you tell me
Mhm.
who your best patients are, like what are their hemoglobins at the time, and so
Right.
what are their typically what are their hemoglobins?
Right.
Because I was under the impression that hydroxyurea was only for that, but I think
Oh, okay.
because
Okay.
right, only just to increase the hemoglobin.
Right.
And I think because I had so many questions, they just kind of was just like, you know what, whatever, woman, I'm not even
We're
about to
not
do.
gonna.
We're not even gonna go through this. You don't want to do it. You don't want to do it. Fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they were like, oh, you know, our patients on it, their hemoglobin is around like 9, low nines, and at the time, my son was like consistently tens,
Hmm.
sometimes 11s. That's when they thought
Yeah.
he had that mutation. So
Right.
I'm just like, I'm not putting him on that because he obviously doesn't
Right.
need it if that's all it's
Right.
for. And
Right.
he wasn't having pain crises. So I'm like,
Right.
no.
There's no reason.
Um,
Mm.
but that was when he was a baby. And so
Right.
now that he's gotten a lot older
Mm.
and he's been exposed to more things, and
Hmm.
the flu, it really kind of rocked his whole system going on. So he's doing much better now, thank God for the doctor we have. She is absolutely amazing. But it is frustrating. Like my daughter, she just had avascular necrosis,
Wow.
and I didn't even know what it was
Mm.
because nobody told me I should be looking out for this.
Yeah.
I took her to the doctor 3 times to get her knee checked out because I'm like, it's swollen. I took her because she had a pain crisis. That was when I said that was her first time going to the hospital for a pain crisis.
Hmm.
And we didn't even get admitted. They were like, okay, they gave her some medicine. They sent us home. A few days later, her pain is gone, but her knee's still swollen. So I
Hmm.
take her back.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, it's just left over from the pain crises. Don't worry about it. It'll go down. Okay. I wait. One night out of nowhere, it just gets super big. I'm like, okay, what is going on? So I call them again. I'm like, hey, I'm going to come up there because I just need to let you guys know I'm on my way, whatever. And they're like, oh, you might not really need to come in for that. Just give it some time. Sometimes with sickle cell that happens. And so the nurse was like, can you at least send a picture? And so I send a picture, and she calls me back immediately. And she's like, oh my goodness, you need to get here fast.
That's what you were saying, that you were coming.
What? Like, I just told you.
Yeah.
So it's like, I get her there. They do all these x-rays, and they're like, oh, come to find out she has avascular necrosis, but it got in the spot in her knee that was like basically got killed from
Mm.
the AVN, got
Mm.
infected. And that's why
It's
her
swollen.
knee had swollen up so bad. So she
Mm.
had to have knee surgery. And so now she has like a scar down the middle of her knee because they had to go in and like clean all that out.
Oh.
But I'm just like, I
It'll
didn't
be.
even know avascular necrosis was a thing. Like I had
Mhm.
no idea that you can have a pain crisis and literally like damage the bones in your body. Like nobody told me any of that
Right.
until it was too late and I'm at the hospital and she's going into surgery. So
Yes.
I get what you're saying. Like they just may not want to scare you, but I'd rather you give me all the information so that I
Yeah.
know what to look for.
Yeah.
And if possible, I can do something to try to avoid it. Like I may not have been able to necessarily avoid the avascular necrosis, but like what I'm saying, something. Let me
Yeah.
know something. I
Yeah.
could have avoided her eating her hair if I would have known prior to. All I need to do was make sure her iron levels were always where they need to
Mhm.
be.
Mhm.
So
100%. I agree. I think, yeah, it's something that needs to change for sure. I think more doctors and more healthcare workers need to I think if they actually teach them a lot about sickle cell disease, I think a lot of healthcare workers will come out wanting to be specializing in that field of like hematology under sickle cell disease, because again, it has so many different aspects to it that is, one, exciting in terms of like studying, like to see like how it works for different sickle cell patients, and two, it's it needs like their solutions need, like we still need solutions for certain
yeah,
things, right? We still need solutions for a lot of different things. But no, I
yeah,
agree, they need to tell us upfront. And with hydroxy here too, I was so against it. It just looked like a bunch of chunky pink and blue pills to me, until I chose to monitor my body and I was like, okay, let's see what this thing is actually doing, because I was on a lot of other like supplements, like I said, cod liver oil that my mom was already giving me to help me stay healthy. And
mm-hmm.
so when I saw that I would only have like one pain crisis a year, and it wouldn't be even severe. It's something maybe I can take care of at home. I was like, okay, I get it now. Like this
Yeah.
actually works, but it's also a buildup whereby you can't. It's not like Tylenol where like you take it right away and it does something. You have got
Right.
to give it time to build up in your system as
Yeah.
well. So I would say like it's good. I'm happy your son is on hydroxyurea now. And it's very good. What dose is he on? Is he on a lot?
He takes 4 milliliters. And it's a liquid. He takes the liquid. So he doesn't have to take the
Liquid.
pills or anything. Yeah. They have a liquid version for kids that are younger.
I
So he's on liquid.
Because I'm like, okay. I recently found out that there was a liquid too because there's this, I don't know if you know about the Sickle Cell companion app that they
Mm,
have. I'll send it to you on TikTok. But yeah, pretty much people on there share their different like parents and warriors. They share like what they're going through, their journey and all that good stuff. But yeah, that was the first time I heard that it does come in a liquid. But even little things like that, they didn't even tell me. They were just like, "This is a chunky pill, and you've got to take 3 of it." And like
yeah.
that was pretty much it. Okay, so let's see. Have we covered half of the stuff? Okay, so now how is your family doing? And is there any updates on the plan for your kids to get the bone marrow transplant, the IVF? We want to know how we can support you. So please let us know.
So they're doing great. We did have, unfortunately, a scare recently with Jordan. She got severe acute chest syndrome at the end of May. And so we were in the ICU for like 4 or 5 days and then a total of like 10 days in the hospital. So that was pretty scary. But she has bounced back like
Yeah.
it never even happened.
But
So thank God for that. So they're doing really well now. The IVF journey has been, it's a lot emotionally, but we tried with the first transfer. It did not work. And so unfortunately, that was the only one that we had that did not have trait and that also matched.
yeah,
We did have um we do have another one that had trait that matched, and you can still have a bone marrow transplant with someone
yeah,
who has trait as long as the AirTLA is the right match. So
mhm,
we are moving forward with that process. So just fingers crossed and prayers up that all that stuff goes well, because we have decided that we're going to try again.
yeah,
Um so that's where we are with that. The transplants and stuff won't happen until years from now,
mhm,
because they have to be at least two before you can even do it. So,
yeah. They have
um,
a good age.
I'm sorry, say it again.
No, I say yeah. They have to be at a certain age,
Yeah.
and body
Ye-
physics and stuff like that. Yeah,
mhm.
for them to
Yeah.
go
And I
ahead.
never want to put any of my babies ever in any sort of harm's way or whatever. So
Yeah,
it's been a process, but we are steady moving forward. We've had some setbacks, but it's not going to stop us.
it shouldn't.
I am not someone that takes no easily. So
Mhm.
we're gonna keep moving forward and we're gonna keep doing it. So
Good.
that's where we are in the process. I am excited. They know nothing about it, so I can't
Yeah.
wait to finally tell them when that day comes.
Yeah.
But I'm excited for them to even just hear about
The fact
the
that they
new
could.
edition and then their cure and all that. So it's
Yeah.
it's gonna be a good day when we get to finally do share. But right now we're just trying to figure out taking life one day at a time and making sure that we
Mhm.
stay as healthy as we possibly can in this middle of this pandemic, because
Yeah.
it is still real. Even though
Very
people want to act like it's not, it is definitely still real. And so
Yeah.
um trying to stay as healthy as we can.
Very much
Yeah.
so. We're gonna keep praying for you, honestly. I like that spirit. You need to keep going. Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
100%. For you and for your kids. And honestly, I do want to see you guys get to that point of the transplant because it's a life-changing experience. It changes your life forever.
Yeah.
And it's very much so worth it, especially if you have a match. And because of the tons of research that's coming on, tons of people, and especially kids, it's very, very common for kids to have the bone marrow transplants. So there's so many success stories. So I think that by the time your kids are at the stage of getting the transplant, there would be no hesitations. There will be
Yeah.
no, like, not a lot of questions where like, oh, is this gonna work? No, because there will be like affirmative research. So yeah, 100%. And I'm here. You already know I'm here. Questions?
Thank you. I think you have been such a blessing. Like just watching your story and this, it's been a blessing. It really has.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Shakeira. Oh,
No,
I
thank
get it. I got
you.
it.
Yeah, no, you got it.
Thank you so much for this. This has been an amazing conversation. What tip would you give to either mothers who have kids with sickle cell disease, maybe new mothers who just found out their child has sickle cell disease, and they're trying to cope, they're trying to deal with it, like mentally, physically, like what advice would you give to them? Yeah.
um, so I always say, and I feel like it's a black proverb, but it takes a village to raise a child. And so I would say to have a child with sickle cell disease, you need a very strong village. There are times when I need to be able to call on my mom or my mother-in-law or, you know, friends to just vent and, tell them about the doctor saying something crazy or, like you need to have those people around you that love you and understand and are willing to support you,
Yeah.
willing to send you meals when you're at the hospital because, or DoorDash you something or send you some cash app or something or
Yeah.
whatever, just so you don't even have to think about it. Like, because
Right.
you're so worried about everything else,
Right.
it's food downstairs for you, go get it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So like you need a village that's going to be there and support you. I would also say find something for yourself that you love to do
Mhm.
outside of being an advocate and taking care of
Mhm.
your kids. Like
Mhm.
you have to take care of yourself. You cannot be the best advocate, the best caregiver, the best mother, wife, father, husband, whatever, if
Yeah,
you aren't the best you.
that's
And
right.
so I think therapy is something that I absolutely advocate for. If you don't feel like
Mhm.
you can talk to people around you, find
Mhm.
somebody to talk to. But find something that you enjoy doing that will help relieve the stress of having children who have to fight every
Right,
single day.
right.
Because it hurts, and you're gonna have sleepless nights, and
Mhm.
you're gonna have a lot of nights where you cry. And
Mhm.
so you want to make sure that you have some sort of outlet that you can
Release all of that.
release that and release that stress and stuff.
Yeah.
Those are things that I definitely feel like everybody needs.
Mhm.
I would say in reference to your children, if going vegan or just even changing up the diet and adding more vegan meals to a diet that you already have, you don't necessarily have to become 100% plant-based. But the conversation that you have with your children should be about how the foods you're eating are harmful to the body, similar to allergies. So what I did for my kids when I decided to take dairy away from my son and meat away
Mhm.
from both my son and my daughter, I
Mhm.
was like, okay, look, y'all have allergies. My son is allergic to tree nuts and my daughter is allergic to peanuts. And
Mhm.
so it's like, y'all know what it's like to have allergies and you don't eat those foods because your body can have a negative reaction.
Mhm.
That's what's happening when you eat dairy. That's what's happening when you eat meat. So
Mhm.
it may not be a rash or, you can't breathe all of a sudden, you need an EpiPen, but it is now you're having pain. Now, you're hurting.
Right.
Now you have more mucus in your body because you're constantly drinking dairy or whatever.
Even the
And
wrong.
so your body is having a negative reaction to this food. And so
Mhm.
we're going to think of it and treat it as an allergy.
Right.
And so for them, they were able to understand, like, okay, this food is not good for my body, so I'm not going to eat this food anymore. And it
Mhm.
kind of just helped them understand, like, my mom's not just taking stuff away from me that I love. It's like she's making sure that I'm eating the things that are going to help make my body strong and make me healthy, and
Mhm.
eliminating the things that are going to affect me negatively. So I was try to frame the conversation around an allergy and think about it that way, because there are foods that if you're allergic to, you're not eating it. Like, you're
That's right.
if you have a peanut allergy, you are not trying to sneak and eat peanuts. You're just not doing it.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
because you know it's going to harm you.
Yeah.
So treated the exact same way. We're not sneaking and eating dairy because dairy causes inflammation, and a couple days after that, now we're having pain somewhere in our bodies.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
let's try to eliminate those things as best as possible. So I
I
think
like
those would be, I think those were probably the biggest things I would say. And hit me up. I have talked to people all over the world in my DMs, from Europe to Africa, the US, like wherever. Like, I've talked to people all over. So
Yeah.
I'm always, my DMs are always open. I am slow to get to them on Instagram. I will say that. I used to be really quick on Instagram, but
Yeah.
now TikTok has taken over. So
Yep. TikTok has taken because TikTok is
TikTok
quick
has taken,
videos. One, two, one, two.
it is. It's
Yeah.
so fast. And so TikTok
Yeah.
is taking over. So you can reach me faster there. But I
Mhm.
will answer if you message me on IG. I will not ignore you. So
100%. I was going to ask, did any of your like the foods you were eating, did they have like contraindications with the medications your children are taking? Not at all.
nope. And even when they're in the hospital, so my kids also take supplements, and if they're ever in the hospital, so like this last time Jordan was there for
Mhm.
acute chest, I bring their stuff with them. I'm like, and the pharmacy just looks over it and they're like, oh, okay, your kids take a vitamin C, multivitamin, and vitamin D. Yes, they
Mhm.
do, on top of the folate that y'all prescribe.
Right.
Okay, bring it to the hospital. The
Mhm.
pharmacy looks at it, they approve, check yes, and they're still
Yeah.
taking it while they're there. So don't be
Yeah.
scared to let them know, like, hey, my kids take these things on a daily
Mhm.
basis, and I
Mhm.
want them to continue doing it while they're here.
Right.
Yeah, so as long as but we've never had any complications with anything that they've done, taken like at home or anything. But I always make sure to give it to the pharmacist to make sure that
Yeah.
whatever new medicine they're giving them at the hospital to get them better
Mhm.
and get it home
Yeah.
won't interfere. So I let the pharmacy check it out. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that's very important, is to let the pharmacy know, because I know the whole problem is if you give it to them without like the medical team knowing, then they have an issue with that. But I think that's a really good way. I was gonna ask something else, I forgot. Oh my gosh, it just slipped my mind. Okay, I forgot what it was. But yeah, I was just gonna say, guys, nutrition is key. Even though for me it took a while to know that all the stuff I thought my mother was doing crazy, I was like, get your PhD. I'm like, why do I have to drink? Literally, my mother would make raw eggs. She would beat it up in a cup and just says, okay, drink this. And we have in Nigeria, we have this leaf, it's like ugu leaf. It's like spinach pretty much, but it's a lot lighter in
Mm,
taste and in color. And every time she would get, or help her to like blend it up, juice it up, and give it to me to drink. And as a kid, I'm like, what is all this? Um, and like same thing, I take like multivitamins in like gummies or like tablets. She when she saw like I didn't like tablets, she's like, okay, let me switch to gummies. I take cod liver oil, vitamin C. We also have like the powder here as well. We also have the green like superfood powder as well. So
hmm.
and people were also asking my mother like, how does your daughter look like this and have so much
Yep,
energy even though she has sickle cell disease? So I'm telling you, Shakeira is telling you, nutrition plays a huge part
it
in
does.
sickle cell disease and the quality of life that your children will have while living through the disease. So definitely check out Shakeira Wesley's page. I on Instagram, on TikTok. her website, We Eat for Life. I will also leave all that in the description box below. But thank you so much. Thank you so much. This
Thank
was
you for having me. This was so fun.
so much
Thank
fun.
you for having me.
Thank you so much. Hopefully, we can do this again sometime or meet in
Yes.
person. Meet in
Yes.
person. That would be
I would
great.
love that. I have always wanted to go to Canada, so I would love to meet in person.
Well, we welcome everybody here, okay?
Yeah.
We're nice, as you hear. Canadians are nice people.
Right. That's what I hear. That's what I hear.
We're
I'm
very
gonna have to
nice
come in the
people.
summertime though, because I don't like cold weather.
Oh yeah, you don't even want to be here during the cold.
Yeah,
That
no.
is
I'm in I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, so I don't want no
it's like we don't do the cold. Yeah, no,
I
I
don't
would
want no
say
snow. I don't want no
none of that. I would not even recommend it. 0 out of 10 stars. Don't recommend. But thank you so much. This has been very eventful, and I hope everybody else found it really good as well. And say hello to your family for me, your kids, everybody. And yeah, hope you have a great rest of your day. I know
You
it's like
too.
what? It's 2 over there. It's 12 over here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to do this.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.